The Galactic Council chambers had never been so quiet. Ambassador Zethrak's 6 eyes darted nervously around the crystalline amphitheater as representatives from 47 species sat in stunned silence. The holographic display still showed the aftermath of the Kepler station incident, and the implications were terrifying. "The humans have crossed a line," whispered Ambassador Vrex, her translucent blue skin rippling with distress patterns. What they did to the hegemony forces was not warfare, it was something else entirely. Zethrak's primary arms trembled as he accessed his neural datapad. The reports were all the same. 17 hegemony dreadnoughts, each the size of a small moon, reduced to floating debris in less than 6 standard hours. Not through superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but through methods that defied every conventional understanding of combat the galaxy had developed over 3 million years. The humans called them ghosts. That was all the intelligence networks could gather. No official designation, no military classification that appeared in any database, just whispered references to units that existed outside normal human command structures. Units that answered directly to something called Terra Command Black Division. "The hegemony had 40,000 warriors on those ships," continued Vrex, her voice barely audible through the chamber's translation matrix. "Seasoned veterans who had conquered 6 systems. They sent distress signals for exactly 17 minutes before complete communication blackout. Chancellor Koreth, the ancient reptilian who had overseen galactic peace for 2 centuries, finally spoke. His voice carried the weight of eons. "Show us the tactical recordings again." The holographic display shimmered and reconstructed the battle space around Kepler Station. The massive hegemony fleet hung in perfect formation, their dark hulls bristling with plasma cannons capable of cracking planets. They had come to claim the mining rights to Kepler's asteroid field, as was their right under the old conquest protocols that predated human membership in the Galactic Council. Then the humans arrived. But it wasn't an arrival in any sense that galactic military doctrine recognized. No fleet translations, no subspace ripples, no energy signatures that should have accompanied a force capable of engaging 17 dreadnoughts. The tactical sensors simply began detecting new contacts, as if they had materialized from empty space itself. "Computer, enhance Sector 77 Alpha," ordered Koreth. The display zoomed in on what appeared to be empty space near the 3rd hegemony dreadnought. For several seconds, nothing seemed different. Then, like a predator revealing itself after perfect camouflage, the outline of something impossible became visible. A human ship, if it could be called that, seemed to shed layers of nothingness. Its hull was a black so complete it seemed to devour light itself. "By the ancient codes," breathed Ambassador Yill, her antenna-like appendages quivering. "How long had it been there?" "Unknown," replied Koreth grimly. "Enhanced spectral analysis suggests it could have been in position for days, possibly weeks." The tactical display continued its horrifying revelation. More contacts appeared throughout the hegemony formation, not at the edges where any sane military force would position for attack, but interspersed among the massive alien warships like wolves among sheep. What happened next would be debated by military strategists for generations. The human ships didn't fire conventional weapons. They didn't launch missiles or deploy fighters. Instead, they seemed to reach out with tendrils of darkness that passed through hegemony shields as if they weren't there. Where these tendrils touched hull plating, the molecular bonds simply ceased to exist. Entire sections of dreadnought armor peeled away like shed skin. But that wasn't the worst part. "Computer, isolate communication frequencies from hegemony vessel designation HG'7, Koreth commanded, though his voice had taken on a note of reluctance. The chamber speakers crackled with the translated screams of hegemony warriors. But these weren't the death cries of soldiers facing superior firepower. They were something else entirely: confusion, terror, And strangest of all, reports of humans walking through their corridors. Walking through their corridors while the ship was still in space. Impossible, muttered Zethrak. No species can survive in hard vacuum. And even if they could, how did they breach the hulls without atmospheric decompression alerts? The recordings provided no answers, only more questions. Hegemony internal security footage, recovered from debris fields, showed human figures moving through ship corridors without environmental suits. They appeared completely unaffected by the lack of atmosphere, the freezing temperatures, or the radiation that should have killed any organic being within seconds. These figures moved with purpose, systematically disabling critical ship systems with tools that seemed to manipulate matter at the atomic level. They didn't fight the hegemony warriors so much as ignore them. Energy weapons passed through them harmlessly. Physical attacks met empty air. The hegemony commanders tried to surrender after the first 4 ships went dark, reported Ambassador Selix, her crystalline form refracting light in patterns that indicated deep distress. The humans didn't respond to any communication attempts. Did they acknowledge the surrender at all? Asked Vrex. Selix's light patterns shifted to the darkest configuration in her species' emotional spectrum. The response came 18 minutes later. A single transmission on all frequencies, 2 words in perfect hegemony battle language, insufficient compensation. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. The concept of refusing surrender was almost unknown in galactic warfare. Even the most aggressive species recognized the practical necessity of prisoners for intelligence and future negotiations. What compensation could they have meant? Wondered Ambassador Quillen, his feline features showing confusion. Korath accessed another file with visible reluctance. Intelligence suggests the humans have been monitoring hegemony activities for the past 2 years. Activities that included the systematic elimination of human colonies in the outer spiral. The revelation sent a chill through the chamber. 3 human colonies, established beyond the recognized boundaries of Galactic Council protection, had been discovered destroyed over the past 24 months. The official reports had attributed the devastation to natural disasters or equipment failures. No one had suspected deliberate action, partly because the destruction was so complete that forensic analysis was impossible. The humans knew, said Zethrak quietly. They knew the hegemony was responsible, and they've been planning this response. For 2 years, Selix's light patterns flickered rapidly. They spent 2 years planning the destruction of 17 dreadnoughts? Not just planning, corrected Korath, his expression grim. Training. Our intelligence networks have detected increased activity around a human system designated as Pandora. Massive resource allocation, construction projects that defy standard shipbuilding protocols, and recruitment from populations that don't officially exist in human census data. The implications were staggering. Humanity, the newest and supposedly least advanced member of the Galactic Council, had been operating a parallel military structure completely outside galactic oversight. They had been developing technologies and training personnel for scenarios that violated every treaty governing interspecies conflict. The question, said Vrex slowly, is what do we do now? The hegemony has been effectively eliminated as a military force. But these ghosts are still out there. Ambassador Yill's antennae drooped. Do we even know where they've gone? Korath activated another display, this one showing current galactic traffic control data. That's perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this situation. According to all our monitoring systems, the human ships involved in the Kepler incident simply vanished after the engagement. No subspace signatures, no gravitational disturbances, nothing. They could be anywhere, whispered Zethrak. They could be here, added Quillen, glancing around the chamber with new paranoia. The silence that followed was pregnant with implications. Every representative present was calculating the same terrifying possibility. If humans could deploy undetectable forces capable of eliminating entire fleets, what did that mean for the balance of power in the galaxy? "We need to contact the human government immediately," declared Vrex. "This cannot be allowed to escalate." Koreth's laugh was bitter. "We tried." Ambassador Chen's response was enlightening. Another hologram activated, showing the familiar form of Earth's senior diplomatic representative. Ambassador Chen appeared calm, almost serene, as she addressed the emergency council session. "The Galactic Council's concern for recent events in the Kepler system is noted and appreciated," her recorded image said. "However, the actions taken were in accordance with human sovereign rights to respond to acts of aggression against our citizens. We consider the matter resolved." Resolved? Selex's light patterns had shifted to deep red. They eliminated an entire fleet and call it resolved? "But that's not the most troubling part," continued Koreth. The hologram continued playing. "We would like to remind council members that humanity has always been committed to peaceful coexistence within the galactic community. Our Special Forces divisions exist purely as defensive measures, and are deployed only under the most extreme circumstances. We sincerely hope that no future incidents will require their activation." The recording ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. "Special Forces divisions," repeated Zethrak slowly. "Plural." The weight of that single word settled over the assembly like a death shroud. What they had witnessed at Kepler wasn't humanity's most elite unit in action. It was just one of several similar forces. Ambassador Vrex began accessing her species' military databases with frantic efficiency. "We need to reassess everything we know about human military capabilities. If this is just one division, the reconnaissance reports from the past 5 years need complete review," agreed Quillen. "How many times have our surveys detected sensor ghosts or gravitational anomalies in human space that we dismissed as equipment malfunctions?" The horrible possibility was becoming clear. Humanity hadn't just hidden the existence of advanced military units. They had been operating them throughout galactic space for years, completely undetected by the most sophisticated monitoring systems 47 civilizations could collectively deploy. Chancellor Koreth stood slowly, his ancient joints protesting. "I am calling an emergency recess. Each delegation will return to their homeworlds and conduct immediate security reviews. We need to know exactly what humanity has been doing, and more importantly, what they're capable of." As representatives began filing out of the chamber, conversations erupted in dozens of languages. Fear, confusion, and angry speculation filled the air, but underneath it all was a single unifying theme that no one wanted to voice directly. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted overnight. Humanity, once considered the newest and least threatening member of the galactic community, had revealed capabilities that rendered traditional military thinking obsolete. Worse, they had demonstrated a willingness to use these capabilities with clinical efficiency against anyone who threatened their interests. The age of peaceful coexistence through mutual understanding was ending. The age of peace through fear was about to begin. And somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, units designated only as ghosts continued their invisible patrol, carrying weapons that could dismantle matter itself and operated by humans who could walk in vacuum as easily as breathing air. The galaxy would learn to pray they never had reason to arrive. Admiral Vos Ka had commanded the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet for 37 standard years. She had conquered 12 systems, suppressed 6 rebellions, and negotiated peace with species whose names were legend among military circles. Nothing in her extensive experience had prepared her for the intelligence briefing currently unfolding in her private command chamber. "Say that again, Intelligence Chief Mordex," she requested, though her forearms were already reaching for emergency communication protocols. "Ma'am, our deep space monitoring stations have detected massive gravimetric disturbances in the Sol system. The energy signatures suggest construction projects of unprecedented scale. Mordex's serpentine form coiled nervously around his hover platform. The humans are building something enormous. Admiral Voss-Ka's species had evolved from apex predators, and her instincts were screaming warnings that her rational mind struggled to process. How enormous? Conservative estimates suggest artificial structures approximately 4 times the mass of their largest moon. Multiple facilities, Admiral. At least 7 confirmed construction sites throughout their star system. The implications were staggering. The Sol system had been under routine observation for the past 3 years, ever since the Kepler incident had forced every major galactic power to reassess humanity's military capabilities. The fact that the humans could construct installations of such magnitude without detection suggested their mastery of stealth technology was even more advanced than previously feared. What kind of construction? Shipbuilding facilities? Weapons platforms? Mordex's hood flattened against his neck in a gesture of extreme uncertainty. Unknown, Admiral. The energy patterns don't match any known industrial processes. But there's something else. Admiral Voss-Ka's secondary arms began inputting commands to her neural interface, preparing to contact the Imperial War Council. Continue. We've been monitoring communication traffic from human space for the past 6 months. There's been a significant increase in what our linguistic specialists classify as recruitment protocols. But, Admiral, they're not recruiting from their normal population centers. Explain. Mordex activated a holographic display showing human space as a 3-dimensional star chart. Dozens of worlds glowed with different colors representing population centers, industrial facilities, and military installations. But scattered throughout the display were smaller points of light that pulsed with ominous red indicators. These are locations where human recruitment ships have been detected, not colony worlds, Admiral, not established settlements. Mordex highlighted one of the red indicators. Prison planets, exile colonies, military punishment battalions stationed on worlds so harsh they're considered death sentences. The Admiral's predatory instincts went into full alert. In her species' ancient past, only the most dangerous hunts required recruiting from the ranks of those who had already proven themselves capable of surviving impossible conditions. They're recruiting from their most dangerous populations, she realized aloud. Yes, Admiral, but that's not all. Another section of the display activated. We've also detected recruitment ships visiting human colonies that officially don't exist. Settlements established beyond their recognized territorial boundaries, in systems so remote that even our most sophisticated surveys had missed them. Admiral Voss-Ka felt a chill that had nothing to do with the chamber's temperature controls. How many colonies? At least 47 confirmed, Admiral. Possibly more. The number was impossible. Humanity claimed 12 systems under Galactic Council treaties. If they had established 47 additional colonies without galactic knowledge, it meant their true territory was nearly 5 times larger than officially recognized. More disturbing, it meant they had populations living under conditions that required no external support, no trade relationships, no connection to the broader galactic community. Perfect breeding grounds for soldiers who operated outside normal civilization. Intelligence Chief, I want emergency consultations with our allies in the Centauri Collective and the Andromedan Trade Federation. If humanity is expanding their special forces capabilities, the Admiral's communication implants chimed with an incoming priority message. Her expression shifted to one of disbelief as she read the transmission header. Admiral Voss-Ka of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. This is Colonel Sarah Martinez, Human Special Forces Division 7. Request immediate private communication regarding mutual security interests. The intelligence chief's hood expanded in shock. Admiral, how did they access our secure channels? Those communication frequencies are encrypted with quantum locks that... They've been listening, Admiral Voska said quietly. "They've been listening to everything." She activated the communication link with the grim certainty of a predator who had suddenly realized she was being stalked by something higher on the food chain. The holographic projection that materialized in her command chamber was unlike any human she had previously encountered. Colonel Martinez appeared to be standing in an environment that defied immediate analysis. The background suggested a vast facility carved from solid rock, but the scale was wrong. Corridors stretched beyond the projection's boundaries, disappearing into distances that suggested underground complexes of continental proportions. "Admiral Voska," Colonel Martinez spoke in perfect Zephyrian, without translation devices. "Thank you for accepting my communication request. I believe we have matters of mutual interest to discuss." The Admiral's war-trained mind cataloged details automatically. The human wore no recognizable uniform, instead dressed in what appeared to be form-fitting black material that seemed to absorb light. Her age was impossible to determine, though her eyes carried the weight of someone who had seen things that age the soul rather than the body. "Colonel Martinez, I was unaware that humanity monitored Zephyrian military communications. We monitor many things, Admiral. It's necessary for maintaining galactic stability." The human's expression remained neutral, but something in her tone suggested threat assessments constantly running in the background. "Your recent intelligence gathering regarding human construction projects suggests you're concerned about our defensive preparations." "Defensive preparations?" Admiral Voska's forearms tensed. "Intelligence suggests construction projects of military significance. The Zephyrian Empire has legitimate security interests." Colonel Martinez nodded, as if the response was expected. "Of course. Would you prefer a demonstration of our defensive capabilities, or would you rather discuss alternative arrangements that ensure continued peaceful coexistence?" The question was phrased politely, but Admiral Voska's predatory instincts recognized it as the moment when prey was offered the choice between flight and death. "What alternative arrangements?" "The human government has been reviewing galactic territorial agreements established before our membership in the Council. We've identified several concerning patterns of expansion that encroach on human security interests." Colonel Martinez gestured, and the holographic display expanded to include star charts that showed territorial boundaries throughout the local galactic sector. Admiral Voska stared at the display with growing alarm. The territorial boundaries shown were not the officially recognized borders established by Galactic Council treaties. These maps showed actual military control zones, areas where various species maintained fleets, mining operations, and forward observation posts, regardless of legal agreements. "These territorial assessments," she said carefully, "are not consistent with Council-ratified boundaries." "No, they're not," agreed Colonel Martinez. "They represent actual strategic control, something humanity has been monitoring for quite some time." The display zoomed in on sections of space that the Zephyrian Empire considered part of their extended strategic zone. Forward observation posts, supply depots, and patrol routes that existed outside official territorial claims but were essential for maintaining their military dominance in 3 systems. "Admiral, humanity recognizes that peaceful coexistence requires understanding actual strategic needs rather than simply adhering to legal documents written before anyone understood the real military dynamics of this galactic sector." Admiral Voska realized she was being offered a deal, though its terms were still unclear. "What does humanity propose?" "Mutual recognition of legitimate security zones. The Zephyrian Empire withdraws military assets from sectors that humanity considers essential to our defensive perimeter. In exchange, humanity provides security guarantees for Zephyrian interests that don't conflict with human strategic requirements." The proposal was reasonable in language, but revolutionary in implications. Humanity was suggesting a complete restructuring of galactic territorial arrangements based on actual military capabilities rather than legal agreements. More disturbing, they were negotiating from a position that assumed human military superiority. And if the Zephyrian Empire finds these terms unacceptable? Colonel Martinez's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the background of her holographic projection. Movement in the vast corridors behind her suggested activity on a scale that defied comprehension. "Admiral, are you familiar with the Hegemony's final transmission from Kepler Station?" The question sent ice through Admiral Voss-Ka's veins. Every military leader in the galaxy had studied those recordings. The desperate Hegemony commander's last message before his flagship was reduced to molecular debris. "They're not fighting us. They're harvesting us." What did that mean, Colonel? The Hegemony fleet at Kepler Station represented significant military assets, ships, weapon systems, strategic technologies that required considerable resources to develop. Humanity believes in recycling useful materials. The holographic display shifted to show technical schematics that made Admiral Voss-Ka's blood freeze. Hegemony weapon systems modified with human technology. Ship hulls that had been rebuilt using materials that hadn't existed in any galactic database. Most disturbing of all, crew quarters designed for species that weren't Hegemony. "You've been recruiting from the survivors," Admiral Voss-Ka realized. "Recruitment implies choice," Colonel Martinez corrected gently. "What we've been doing is providing opportunities for former Hegemony military personnel to continue serving in capacities more aligned with galactic peace and stability." The euphemism was chilling in its implications. Humanity hadn't just destroyed the Hegemony fleet. They had captured survivors and integrated them into human military structures. Veterans of one of the galaxy's most aggressive military forces were now working for the species they had attempted to conquer. How many survivors? Sufficient to provide valuable insights into various galactic military doctrines and strategic thinking. Colonel Martinez paused. "Would you like to speak with any of them?" The offer was clearly a demonstration rather than a genuine invitation. Admiral Voss-Ka shook her head quickly. "Admiral, humanity values the Zephyrian Empire as potential partners in maintaining galactic stability. Your species' military traditions and strategic capabilities would be significant assets in addressing future security challenges." "Future security challenges?" Colonel Martinez gestured again, and the holographic display expanded to show the entire galactic sector. New indicators appeared, showing movement patterns and energy signatures that had been previously undetected by any galactic monitoring systems. "The galaxy is larger than most council members realize, Admiral. There are civilizations beyond current territorial boundaries that have been observing our various conflicts with considerable interest. Civilizations with technologies and capabilities that make current galactic military thinking obsolete." Admiral Voss-Ka stared at the display with growing horror. The movement patterns suggested massive fleets operating in deep space, technologies that could travel between star systems without using established jump routes, and energy signatures that dwarfed anything currently deployed by Council species. "How long have you known about these threats?" "Humanity has been monitoring extragalactic activities since shortly after our admission to the Council. The technologies and strategic doctrines we've been developing are designed to address these larger threats." The revelation recontextualized everything. Humanity's mysterious special forces capabilities, their hidden construction projects, their recruitment from dangerous populations, all of it was preparation for conflicts that other galactic species didn't even know existed. "Why are you sharing this information with me?" "Because the Zephyrian Empire has military traditions and strategic resources that humanity respects. Because your species understands the necessity of decisive action when facing existential threats. And because the alternative to cooperation is significantly less pleasant for everyone involved." Admiral Voss-Ka understood the offer and the threat with crystalline clarity. Humanity was recruiting allies for a coming war that would make current galactic conflicts seem like minor diplomatic disputes. Species that accepted partnership would be strengthened and protected. Species that remained potential obstacles would be dealt with as efficiently as the hegemony had been. What would partnership entail? Joint training exercises for selected Zephyrian military units, access to enhanced technologies that improve defensive capabilities, integration of Zephyrian strategic thinking into human threat assessment protocols. Colonel Martinez paused. And most importantly, inclusion in planning for scenarios that currently exist beyond Zephyrian strategic consideration. How much time do we have to decide? Colonel Martinez checked something outside the holographic projection's range. The next phase of extragalactic activity is projected to begin within the next 18 standard months. Humanity would prefer to have alliance structures established well before that timeline becomes critical. The communication ended, leaving Admiral Voss-Ka alone with Intelligence Chief Mordex and the horrifying realization that everything they thought they knew about galactic strategic reality was wrong. "Admiral," Mordex whispered, "what do we do?" Admiral Voss-Ka was already activating emergency communication protocols to contact the Imperial War Council. "We do exactly what the humans suggested, Intelligence Chief. We prepare for a war that we never saw coming." In the depths of space, human construction projects continued their mysterious work, building facilities designed for conflicts that would reshape the galaxy itself. The first sign that humanity's warnings had been accurate came from the Outer Rim Monitoring Station at Vega 7. Chief Observer Thacklin was completing routine deep space scans when her instruments detected something that made no sense according to established galactic physics. "Supervisor Kreltoth, please verify these readings," she called across the observation deck, her crystalline voice carrying notes of confusion that her species rarely displayed. Supervisor Kreltoth approached her station with the methodical pace of someone who had spent 40 years analyzing cosmic phenomena. His scaled hide rippled with patterns that indicated mild annoyance at the interruption, but those patterns shifted to alarm as he reviewed Thacklin's data. "This is impossible," he muttered, his secondary brain pods expanding to process additional calculations. "The gravitational disturbances suggest mass displacement equivalent to 17 star systems, but there's nothing there." "That's what I thought initially," Thacklin agreed, her form flickering between visible and translucent as her anxiety increased. "But look at the temporal readings." Kreltoth's attention shifted to the chronometer displays, and his scales went completely dark. The instruments were detecting time distortions that suggested massive objects moving at significant percentages of light speed, but occupying space where their sensors detected only empty void. "Contact the Galactic Council immediately," he ordered. "Priority Alpha emergency protocols." Before Thacklin could activate the communication systems, alarms began sounding throughout the monitoring station, their long-range scanners, designed to detect objects across multiple star systems, were suddenly registering contacts that defied every principle of astrophysics they understood. Ships, thousands of them, appearing not through conventional faster-than-light travel, but by simply becoming visible where nothing had been moments before. "Supervisor." Thacklin's voice had become a whisper of pure terror. "They're not using any propulsion systems we can identify. They're not using any technology we can identify." The main display screen activated, showing a three-dimensional representation of local space that made both observers step backward in instinctive fear. A fleet stretched across several light hours of space, composed of vessels that followed no architectural principles any galactic civilization had ever encountered. The ships were organic in appearance, but clearly artificial. They pulsed with internal lights that suggested biological processes, but their surfaces reflected sensor scans in ways that indicated construction materials unknown to galactic science. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to be growing as the observers watched, increasing in size and complexity as if responding to their new environment. "Contact! Contact! Contact!" Thacklin was frantically activating every communication protocol available to the monitoring station. "Unknown fleet detected at coordinates." The transmission cut off mid-sentence as something that couldn't be happening began to happen. The alien fleet was moving toward the galactic core at speeds that should have been impossible. Not through faster-than-light travel, which required specific trajectories and energy expenditures that could be tracked and predicted, but by existing in multiple locations simultaneously before consolidating into positions closer to their destination. At the current rate of approach, they would reach the outer council systems within days. The emergency communication that reached Admiral Voss-Ka 3 hours later confirmed her worst fears. The extragalactic threat that humanity had warned about was not only real, but had arrived ahead of their projected timeline. "Admiral," her communication officer reported with barely controlled panic, "we're receiving similar reports from monitoring stations throughout the Outer Rim. The fleet is enormous. Conservative estimates suggest over 10,000 vessels of unknown configuration." Admiral Voss-Ka had spent the past 6 months working with human liaison officers to integrate Zephyrian forces into joint training programs. What she had learned during those exercises had fundamentally changed her understanding of warfare, but even the advanced scenarios they had practiced seemed inadequate for what was approaching. "Activate the enhanced communication array and request immediate conference with Colonel Martinez," she ordered. "Emergency protocols." The response came within minutes, confirming that humanity had been monitoring the same developments. "Admiral Voss-Ka?" Colonel Martinez appeared on the holographic display, but her background had changed dramatically. Instead of the underground facilities she had transmitted from previously, she now stood in what appeared to be the command center of a massive spacecraft. "I assume you're contacting us regarding the extragalactic arrivals." "Colonel, my government has authorized full partnership under the terms we discussed. What do you need from us?" "Immediate evacuation of all non-military personnel from your 3 Outer Rim systems. Military assets should be repositioned to defensive coordinates we're transmitting now. And Admiral..." Colonel Martinez paused, her expression becoming grimmer than Admiral Voss-Ka had ever seen it. "Prepare your people for combat doctrines that will challenge everything they thought they knew about warfare." The next 72 hours transformed the galactic political landscape more completely than the previous 1,000 years combined. Species that had maintained neutrality for centuries suddenly found themselves forced to choose between alliance with humanity's coalition and facing the extragalactic threat alone. The choice became easier as more intelligence data became available. The approaching fleet wasn't simply another aggressive civilization seeking territorial expansion. Their ships showed evidence of technologies that could manipulate matter at the quantum level, energy sources that tapped into dimensional spaces beyond normal physics, and most disturbing of all, biological components that suggested they assimilated other species into their own technological matrices. "They're not here to conquer us," reported Ambassador Chen during an emergency Galactic Council session. "Based on communication intercepts that our xenolinguistics teams have managed to decode, they consider our entire galactic cluster to be raw materials for conversion into their technological infrastructure." Chancellor Koreth, who had seemed ancient before, now appeared to have aged decades in a matter of days. "Conversion? Every star system, every planet, every living being. They don't distinguish between useful resources and waste products. Their expansion protocols treat entire civilizations as organic components to be integrated into their fleet structure." The holographic displays showed intercepted communications from the approaching fleet, translated through linguistic matrices that had required humanity's most advanced artificial intelligence systems to decipher. The content was worse than any military leader had imagined. The extragalactic civilization called themselves something that approximately translated as the Synthesis. Their expansion model was based on the concept that all matter and energy in the universe was simply inefficiently organized, waiting to be optimized through integration into their collective technological systems. They had consumed 17 galaxies. Admiral Voss-Ka, Colonel Martinez's voice cut through the shocked murmur that had filled the council chambers. Would you please brief the Assembly on the joint training exercises your forces have been conducting? Admiral Voss-Ka stood, her 4 arms gesturing to activate her own presentation system. Honored representatives, the combat doctrines that humanity has been developing are unlike anything our species previously considered possible. The display showed footage from training exercises that had been conducted in the deepest regions of human space. Zephyrian warriors, enhanced with human technology, moving through environments that defied conventional understanding of physics. Combat scenarios that took place in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Weapons that could affect enemy forces across vast distances without traveling through intervening space. Humanity has developed the capability to wage warfare across dimensional barriers, Admiral Voss-Ka continued. Their special forces can operate in environments where normal matter doesn't exist, deploy weapons that attack the fundamental forces holding enemy structures together, and coordinate battle strategies that span multiple alternate realities. The revelation that humanity had been preparing for interdimensional warfare helped explain the technologies they had deployed against the hegemony. The ability to walk through vacuum, to phase through solid matter, to appear and disappear without detection, all of it was based on accessing alternate dimensional spaces where normal physics operated according to different rules. The Synthesis fleet operates using similar principles, added Colonel Martinez. Their expansion success in other galaxies has been based on the inability of normal 3-dimensional civilizations to respond to attacks that come from directions that don't exist in conventional space. Ambassador Chen stood to address the Assembly. Humanity is prepared to coordinate the defense of our galactic cluster. However, this coordination will require unprecedented cooperation between species that have historically maintained separate military commands. The terms were presented with diplomatic language, but their meaning was clear. Humanity was offering to save the galaxy from a threat that no other civilization could even comprehend, but the price was accepting human strategic leadership in all matters related to galactic defense. The debate lasted less than an hour. When faced with absorption into an alien technological matrix or cooperation with humans who had proven they could develop countermeasures for impossible threats, the choice was obvious. Chancellor Koreth formally announced the establishment of the Galactic Defense Coalition under human strategic command. The first joint operations began immediately. Admiral Voss-Ka found herself standing in the command center of a human facility that existed partially outside normal space. The sensation was indescribable, like being in a place that was simultaneously vast and intimate, solid and insubstantial. Admiral, Colonel Martinez approached, accompanied by figures that Admiral Voss-Ka was beginning to recognize as human special forces operatives. They moved with fluid precision that suggested enhancement far beyond natural biological capabilities. Your forces have adapted to enhanced combat protocols better than our most optimistic projections predicted. Through the facility's viewing systems, Admiral Voss-Ka could observe the deployment of the combined galactic fleet. Ships from dozens of species, enhanced with human technology, taking positions in formations that extended across multiple dimensional layers. The strategy was complex beyond anything she had previously imagined, but the principles were becoming clear. We're not going to fight them in normal space, she realized. Correct. The Synthesis expects resistance based on conventional 3-dimensional tactics. They've prepared countermeasures for every strategy that any of their previous targets attempted. Colonel Martinez gestured toward the tactical displays. But they've never encountered opponents who could initiate combat from dimensional angles they can't access. The battle, when it came, lasted 18 hours and rewrote every textbook on military strategy that had ever been written. The synthesis fleet arrived at the outer perimeter of galactic space, expecting to encounter conventional resistance. What they found instead was a coordinated defense that attacked from dimensions they didn't know existed, using weapons that affected the fundamental quantum structures holding their ships together. Human Special Forces units materialized inside synthesis vessels and began systematic disruption of their technological systems from within. Enhanced coalition forces engaged enemy fleets across multiple dimensional layers simultaneously. Most importantly, human strategic coordination prevented the synthesis from implementing their standard conversion protocols by attacking their command structures faster than they could adapt. The final transmission from the retreating synthesis fleet was intercepted by human intelligence networks and became legendary among coalition forces. Impossible configuration, impossible coordination, impossible response, withdrawal to reassess threat parameters. For the first time in their expansion across 17 galaxies, the synthesis had encountered a civilization that could not only resist their conversion protocols, but could threaten their technological supremacy. The galaxy was saved. The price was the transformation of galactic civilization itself. In the aftermath of the Synthesis War, as historians would later call it, every aspect of interspecies relations had been fundamentally altered. Humanity's special forces had proven themselves capable of defending against threats that existed beyond normal understanding, but their methods required cooperation and integration that dissolved traditional concepts of individual species sovereignty. The Galactic Defense Coalition became a permanent organization. Species that wanted protection from future extragalactic threats accepted human strategic oversight. Those that preferred independence found themselves increasingly isolated as dimensional warfare became the new standard for galactic security. Admiral Vos Ka, now serving as Director of Coalition Strategic Operations, stood in a command center that existed simultaneously in 17 different star systems. Around her, representatives from 47 species coordinated defenses against threats that most of their populations would never understand. Director, Colonel Martinez approached, though her rank had long since become purely ceremonial. She now commanded forces that spanned multiple galaxies and operated in dimensions where traditional military hierarchies had no meaning. Long-range reconnaissance reports confirmed that the synthesis has established staging areas in the Andromeda Galaxy. Their next approach will likely involve alliance structures with other interdimensional civilizations. Admiral Vos Ka reviewed the intelligence data with the calm competence of someone who had learned to think in terms of threats that spanned multiple realities. Recommended response? Expansion of coalition defensive perimeters to include monitoring stations in adjacent galactic clusters. Enhanced recruitment protocols for species with natural resistance to dimensional manipulation. And, Colonel Martinez paused. Development of offensive capabilities that will allow us to carry the war to their staging areas before they can mount another invasion attempt. The proposal was logical and terrifying in equal measure. Humanity was suggesting that galactic civilization should become actively aggressive, seeking out and destroying threats across the cosmic landscape before those threats could organize effective invasions. The galaxy that emerges from this conflict will be very different from the one we started with, Admiral Vos Ka observed. Yes, Colonel Martinez agreed, but it will survive, and survival, Director, is the only victory that ultimately matters. In the depths of space, human construction projects continued their work, building facilities designed for conflicts that spanned multiple galaxies and dimensions that existed beyond normal comprehension. The species that had once been considered the least threatening member of the Galactic Council had revealed themselves to be the most dangerous force the universe had ever produced. But they were the galaxy's dangerous force now, committed to ensuring that no threat would ever again catch galactic civilization unprepared. The age of peace through fear had become the age of peace through overwhelming, interdimensional superiority. And somewhere in the vast darkness between galaxies, other civilizations were beginning to learn a simple truth that would reshape their understanding of cosmic politics. When humanity's special forces arrived, prayers were the only response that made sense.